Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So in the last video we have talked about the basics of Dart, printing hello world programs and conditional statements, commenting and the for loop. So in this video we will continue that series and we will learn about for in loop, do while loop and functions. So these things are also important as I mentioned in the last video. So let's get started in this video and I hope you will enjoy learning it. So let's get started. So here we are in our last video. So we have done this part. So in the last video I told you about the format, how we are going to learn loops. So the format is simple. First of all we talk about the syntax of the loop, then we talk about the flow chart, how the loop works, then we will talk about its example. So we're going to continue with that. Okay, so we have talked about the for loops. So there's a sub part of for loop or a kind of for loop which is for in loop. So how it works, you can see there's the syntax, because we doesn't need to have a flowchart for it. So the syntax is simple, like it says for, then the variable name in object. So here you can see like the variable name is something which you are going to specify, like this should be the name of the variable which I'm going to use in the code which I'm going to write in these in between the curly braces, or we better call it as scope in like in better terminologies. Okay, so here's an example. For example, I have created a list. I think you have gone through the last video where we also have talked about lists and map. So here you can see it's a list, and it's a list of string. It says Ram, Sham and Ghanshyam. So the list, we are looping through the list and we are printing all the users names. So how we are doing that, we say for var user, so we are declaring the variable name here. Then we use the in keyword and we say users. So users is the name of the list or object. Okay, so you can compare it with the syntax to have a better idea. So after that we print username is this dollar user. So what this statement is, so I think in the last video we have talked about templating strings. So this is kind of the templating string we are printing. So you cannot see the output. I have not written the output in this PDF so that we can just go through that in the Dartpad website itself. So what we are going to do here, so I would say void main, then we are going to write the same program so that we have an idea like how the output works and how the loop works. So we say var users is equals to array, and we say maybe the spelling is wrong. Let me just, I think it's correct. Okay, what's okay, so we have created the list. So now what we're going to do, we're going to loop through these this all the elements of this list. We say var user in users, then we will say print user name is dollar user. Okay, so this was the code written in the PDF. So we're going to run it and we can see the output. Username is Ram, username is Sham, username is Ghanshyam. So the name of the variable doesn't matter much, but to understand and to relate with it, we say if the list is we are naming list as users, then we should name an element of the list as user. Okay, so this kind of a naming convention we follow in most of the programming languages to make people, to make other developers working with you to understand the code and what the purpose of the variable you have created. Okay, so you can see the for in loop here. Okay, so now next loop is while loop. So the syntax of while loop is more simpler than the for loop and for in loop. So what while loop syntax is, the while keyword, then condition, and then the code. Okay, so the code in this scope of while loop will be executed unless and until the condition is false. Like if the condition is false, this code will not execute it. If the condition is true, the code will execute it. So this is how it works. So if you go through this flow chart, then you will have a better idea about it. So what the flow chart says, start, first of all evaluate the condition. You can say we are evaluating the condition. Then if condition is true, then we are going to execute the code in the scope, and then we are again going to, after running all the executing all the code in here, then we are again going to evaluate the condition. If the condition is again true, we are again going to execute the same code. So this is how the loop works. So if in some case the condition is false, then we'll go out of this loop. So this is how the flow chart of while loop. So I have created a basic infinite while loop. So what infinite loop is? The loop never ends and the program runs continuously, and we don't need those infinite loops in most of the cases. But yes, if you are developing games and stuff, then most of the games have a kind of loop which again continues. So we are not developing those kind of things, so we will not tackle with the infinite loops. But if you have did something wrong, then you might face the infinite loop. Okay, but Dart will provide you warning about that. Okay, so let's run some while loop here. So I will say integer a is equals to 10, then while a is greater than equals to 1, I will say print a. Okay, so format the code. So if I want to run, I should get an infinite loop. Okay, or either it could show the warning if the ID supports warning or infinite loops, depending on the ID basically. So it's not showing me something in the console, no issue. So it's an infinite loop. Okay, oh man, site is crashed, even the site is crashed. Okay, this is something to report on GitHub. Okay, so how it works basically, why it's an infinite loop? Because we have not decremented the value of a in the loop. So after the print statement, we need to decrement the value of a here. Okay, so I'm going to again open the dartpad. Okay, so I will just say a minus minus and run. So now you can see it should print 10 to 1. Okay, so it's printing 10 to 1. So this is important. If we have removed this thing or we have commented this thing, then we have to face the infinite loop. Okay, so make sure while creating loops there is no edge cases because of which while loop infinite loop can cause. Okay, so now we have to talk about do while loop. So while loop and do while loop are pretty much same, but the only difference is, like in while loop, first of all the condition is evaluated, and on the basis of condition, if the condition is true, then only the code gets executed. But in case of do while loop, it just do the stuff first, then it will evaluate the condition. So here you can see from the flow chart, code inside the body of do while loop, then it checks for the condition. If the condition is true, then it will again execute the code inside the do while loop body. Okay, if the condition is false, it will go out. So if you see the syntax, so here we say do, and in the scope we mention all our statements which needs to be executed, and once after that we say while and set the condition. Okay, so this is how it works. So here's a basic example. In the example we did the same thing, exactly the same thing which we have did this, so the output will be the same, but we have used do while loop, so need not to just do it again. Now talking about loop control statements. So what are loop control statement? For example, in real world problems, you are searching a particular element in a list. Then when you reached to that element, you have what you did, you first created a loop to go through all the elements of the list using the for in loop. And in the for in loop, you have added a if else statement to just know if you have find out the correct thing which you are searching for. And at that time you don't need to make the loop run again and again, so you need to quit the loop, so that the loop will, there is no need to go through all the elements once you have reached what you are searching for. So you can use the break statement. So break is a really interesting statement. So what break statement is? Just go out of this loop. So break statements help you to go out of the loop and like exit the loop. Continue statements is what it's continue statement just skips the subsequent statements. Like if we mention continue statement here, then it will skip those statements written below it, and basically you will be iterated to the next loop. Okay, so this is how continue works. So this is pretty much all about loops. Loops are not this much we have talked, but we need to practice it a bit. But for practicing, I doesn't say like you need to practice a lot, because while developing real world apps we can do that. And if you are not doing competitive coding stuff, so you don't need to do much practice of it. You should have basic idea of how loops work. So if you just make a 2-3 programs, like do a factorial program and do something like a table printing program, then it's good enough to just go with the next topic. So the next topic is enumeration. So enumeration is basically used for defining named constants in Dart. So for example, I just like, for me, I say enumeration is something like creating your own variable, something like that. So what we do, we say enum, and then we specify the name of our variable, and then we specify the constants which it can have. So it's kind of the thing we specify. This is an example, okay? So if you see the syntax, so we say enum, then enum name, and enumeration list. So okay, so we have created an enum that is named as category, then it can have the values as gaming, technical, and entertainment. So let's see in the Dart pad. Okay, so I will just create an enum here. I'll say enum category. In the category, I will say technical, gaming, and okay, I think I just written the wrong figure. Oh shit. So there's not, these are I think not curly braces, but this thing. We are getting some issues in it. Let me solve the issues. It says these things are not defined. Okay, let's exit with this thing. So this is the syntax. We say n technical, gaming. Okay, so this is our enum. Okay, so we need to create enum at a global level. So this is one thing I like, even I forgot to tell you. So we need to make our enums at global level rather than defining them in a method. So in method, like in main method, we can just create something like category ct, and I would say ct is equals to category dot technical, then ct. So if we run this thing, so it should say category dot technical. So this is what it is. So this is what we call enums. So we have created our basic syntax, or kind of a, like, we need to specify a few things. We need to create a particular category. So this is how we do. This is called enumeration in Dart. Okay, so I really forgot to tell you about this thing, that you need to declare these things at a global level rather than in your main method, because in main method you are going to use them, not to declare them. Okay, so after this enum we need to go with the functions. So this is the last thing we are going to talk about in this video. So functions in Dart. So I say functions are basically code blocks that are written to be reused in again and again. For example, if we are working in a group, and I ask my other teammate to add this functionality to our app, so what she will do is to just code for that functionality in a function and give the file to me, and I will import the file, I will import the function and use that function directly. So this is how it works. So as I said, using functions we can make our code more readable, maintainable, and reusable. So we don't need to write the same code again and again. We could just make small functions out of it. Okay, functions are basically a group of statements that are meant to do a particular task. So this is the definition which I give to it. Like these function is basically a code block which has meant to do a particular task, and we are going to reuse it again and again. So from this figure you can just grasp the thing. Like, we provide some input, here's the function, and it returns the output. So it is totally not necessary we need to provide some input, it is totally not necessary it should give us some output, but this is how the overall idea of function is. It's just like a machine which does a specified task. Okay, so this is what I call function. So here's an example. You can see in this example what I say, like this is void main method. Okay, so this is the void main function, and in this we have print hello, and in the print hello we have this method and it prints hello. Okay, so just type this code in the dart pad and we have a good idea about it. So I would say void main, I would say print hello. Okay, so it shows me an error like print hello isn't defined. Okay, so we are going to define it now. We say print hello, and we say print okay, so just run it and it should show us hello. Okay, so you can see it. So this is the way we declare functions. So functions, even you can see the main is also a function. So functions, first of all we say the function name, then curly like normal parenthesis, then in the curly braces and this is the space where we write our code. So here you will say your program. Okay, so here will be your program for that particular function, and the function will gets executed when you call it from the main. So how does the compiler read it? So compiler will find out in this file where is main function. So it says here's the main function. Okay, so in the main function it will execute the first line. It will say okay, so print hello. So it will find out where print hello is defined. So it says here's the print hello. Okay, so it will execute the code in it, and after that it will get back from this line and just execute the code which is written here. Like if we have written something here, so that code will be executed. This is how compiler compiles the code. Okay, so as in the last video I have already mentioned about the return type. So void is the return type, which means like it doesn't returns anything. But if we want to like return something, if we say int, so it should have a return statement. You can see I'm getting a warning that it's not returning something, so I would use the return keyword and say return 0 or any integer it should return. Okay, and I can get that return output from here as, let's say, integer output is equals to this. So when I just print output, okay, let's make it to 5 and just run this code. So it should show us 5. So this is how it works. We call this method, and here the compiler just compiles the code which says return 5. So this will get exited and it will return 5. So this thing will be changed with the number 5, and input and the output variable is set to 5. Then we have print the output. Okay, so this is how it works. Now let's talk about calling with parameters. So as you say, as I said, like the input. So input are basically the parameters which we pass to a function. So here you can see in the same similar example in which I'm just I had written a method to print the summation of two numbers. Okay, so this is how we do. We say add numbers, then we say integer a, integer b. These are the two things which we are expecting. So you can see like these are the two things, integer a and integer b, which the method or which the function add numbers is expecting to get when it is called. Okay, and it is required to have those also. If it is not required, it will throw out an error. Okay, so let's say it will print sum is, then we will just use this thing, let's say a plus b. Okay, so from this point of view we just say add numbers 5, 4. Okay, we will run this thing. So this is how it works. It should show us 9. Okay, the sum is 9. This is how it works. Okay, so this is a method. So it has not specified any return type, which means it is a void return type. It doesn't return something. No, these things rely with other programming languages. In that, this can return anything, and we doesn't need to just set something like this is the return type. By default, it is not void, it is dynamic. Okay, so this is how it works. We could just return the summation as well, like for example a plus b, and we can get the integer sum here, and we can even print it again. Okay, so this is how it works. So after that, we will talk about the optional parameters. Some parameters which are optional, which we don't need to specify, which are not required. For example, like in this thing we are saying add numbers. We could say integer a, integer b, and then in square brackets we say integer c. So if you want to specify an third parameter, then you can specify the function will run. And if you are not specifying the third parameter, you have just given integer a and b, then it's also well and good, the function will run. So this is what optional parameters mean. Okay, so we specify like this is the optional parameter using the square brackets. And now we need to talk about the named parameters. Okay, so named parameters are also the optional parameters. So just show you how named parameters work. So in name parameters, I will just remove this statement. Okay, from here I will say just var result is equals to this thing, and we'll say we'll wrap this thing in curly braces, which means now this is expecting named parameters. Okay, so this is expecting named parameters. That's why we are facing this issue. There are two types of parameters: named parameters and positional parameters. So this is now expecting the named parameters. You can see it says too many positional arguments. Expect 0 expected but found 2. Okay, so now what we do is just say a is this, b is this. Oh, so we don't need to wrap it with curly braces here. Okay, so it will just give us the result. We have not returned it from here. Okay, so okay, so now it should work. So we're going to run it, and we will again get the same output 9. Okay, so this is how the named parameters work. We could name it just something else rather than a. We'd say num1 or anything like we want to have it. Okay, so we have talked about named parameters. So okay, so you can also set a default value to them. For example, if you have not passed any named parameters, since these are optional parameters, so I would say it is 5 and it is also 5. Okay, so if you are not specifying, let's say I'm not specifying a, okay, I'm just specifying b, then when I'm going to run it, so it will give me 9 again. Okay, so let's say it's 9. Okay, so it will give me 13. So how it works, like if you have not specified the named parameter, since it's an optional parameter, then it will set the default value, which is 9 here. So this is how we set default values to functions. Okay, so if we want to specify like what kind of data type or which it will return, you can see it says dynamic here by default. So if we can write it as integer, and it will work fine. So this is how it works. This is how functions is, and functions are important while scaling up your applications. And like these are the basic fundamentals of every programming language. We need functions in all the programming languages, and these are the required things we should have. Okay, so now there is also one thing which is arrow functions. I'm going to talk about the arrow functions. It's really simple. What we say in arrow function is we say just use this equals to create an arrow. You can see this arrow, we used equals to and then the greater than symbol. Okay, so we will say a plus b. Okay, so there is no output, no error, I think. Okay, so we'll run it again and it will show the same output 13 without any errors. So what it does, the arrow function just returns whatever is here. So it says a plus b, then it will compute a and b and return it directly. So you have like less number of lines to lines of code to write to return something. Okay, so this is how this works. This is what we call arrow functions. And arrow function, or you can also say it as lambda functions, because in some programming language we say these are lambda functions, and in some programming language we say these are arrow functions. Okay, it is as same as the arrow functions or lambda functions in JavaScript, if you are familiar with them. No issue if you are not. This is what it is. Okay, so we have completed the functions here as well. So what my thinking is, like, we are doing really fast and we need to do it, and I'm targeting, as I said, to minimize this thing, and we'll do that. So in the most probably in the next videos we will talk about object oriented programming in Dart, and after that we are done with the Dart thing and we will continue with Flutter. And in Flutter I am assured that you will enjoy learning it a lot. We will developing real world applications, and even you can publish those applications to Play Store if you want to do so, and I will be creating a video on how to publish apps on the Play Store. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.